position. If you feel your lower back is overarched, you can bend your knees if you wish, and that will push your lower back into the mat, and it will feel a little bit more comfortable. So firstly, begin with relaxed breathing. So say a cadence of 4 in, 4 out. Close your eyes and just feel, try to scan down your body for any tension. Maybe you find some in the shoulders, just let the shoulders go. Maybe in your legs, just give your toes a wiggle, shake your legs, and then just relax completely. As you breathe, feel as though you're sinking a little deeper into the mat. Now, I could do with somebody to volunteer to wear a pulse oximeter. Let's use Russell as our guest. So just on that finger there. We'll see if he's alive still, if we're watching. Right, relax completely. Don't cross your legs, Russell, it will stop your circulation. So Russell is 97% saturated oxygen in his blood, and normal is, of course, between 95 and 99. So we're bang in the middle. And don't forget that is after high intensity exercise as well. Breathing in for 4, out for 4. Now we're going to switch it up. Breathing in for 3, out for 5. Focus on the out breath. Short breath in, long breath out. Imagine you're blowing up the balloon. Once again, you can open the mouth to breathe out because you will lose more CO2 through your mouth than you will through your nose. You just do not breathe in through your mouth. So blow, inflate the balloon. Just 5 breaths. And no doubt you get the idea, similar to your boxing. We are lowering your CO2 before a breath hold, and that will make your breath hold experience so much easier. Now the important thing about breath holds is that there is no anxiety, there is no stress. You can breathe whenever you want. You are in control of your own body. But if we do a breath hold and I'm asking you to hold for 1.5 minutes or whatever, if you feel the need to breathe, then just breathe. It's not a competition, so we don't want any stress or anxiety. When you're ready, take a deep breath in, as big as you can, a gentle breath out, and then hold your breath. And we're just going to start with 60 seconds, not 30.
We hold on the out breath or the in breath, so.
Yeah, so you breathe in, out, and stop. So we'll just do a short one to start. If you're not used to breath holding, 30 seconds may seem a little bit long. So we'll take a big breath in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take a deep breath in, and when you breathe out, hum. Out. Feel the vibration in your nasal cavity. So your mouth is closed when you hum and you vibrate your nostrils. Now reoxygenate. Breathe in for 5, out for 3. Big breath in, short breath out. In for 5, out for 3. saturated again. And Russell is back to 98%, even more than when we started. 40 seconds this time. Now remember, you could see from Russell, oxygen is high, CO2 is low. There's no need to breathe. Relax. Breathe out and hum. Reoxygenate, in for 5, out for 3. Big breath in. Let's get oxygen saturation back up. And Russell went down to 88% on that breath hold. Reoxygenate, in for 5, out for 3. Fully in. Russell was 87% blood saturation at the end of that breath hold. Take some deep breaths in, short breath out, and Russell is now 98, 99% fully saturated. Once again, back to normal. Just 5 breaths, we'll do it. One more. On the next one, whenever you're ready, breathe in fully, passively out, and hold. Now we'll try for 60 seconds. Big breath in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fully in. Breathe out and hum. Reoxygenate, in for 5, out for 3. Russell's down to 75% blood saturation after that breath hold. And personally, I won't let him go any lower. So on the next one, I may tell you to breathe, Russell. To give you an idea, if your blood saturation was 94% and you were attended by a paramedic, he would put on an oxygen mask and take you to A&E. Because that is a chronic condition, we are doing intermittent hypoxemia. Low oxygen in your blood. Because it's intermittent, you know that you can recover and get back to 99% within 3 to 5 breaths. When you're ready, take that next big breath in, passively breathe out and hold. Take yourself back to your happy place. Relive those memories, engage your mind as though you are actually there. Every colour, sight and sound. Breathe in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fully in. Breathe out and hum. Reoxygenate, in for 5, out for 3. Big breath in, short breath out. From 75% saturation, Russell is already 98%. Back to normal after just 3 to 5 breaths. Coming up to our last breath hold. Did everyone manage 70 seconds? Everyone okay? Okay. Remember, There is no stress, no anxiety. You breathe when you want to breathe. You are in control of your own body. So if you want to override what I'm saying, please do so. Let's switch it up one last time. In for 3, out for 5. Inflate the balloon. Take a big breath in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fully in. Breathe out and hum. Breathe normally, reoxygenating your body. In for 5, out for 3. Fully in. Short breath out. Big breath in. Short breath out. 5 breaths, and Russell is 99% fully saturated. Well done. Fully saturated, return to relaxed breathing. Now slowly open your eyes just to the light. Give yourself a few moments to pull yourself around. And then slowly just come back up to a sitting position. And let's just do our next theory. So what the hell happened there? Russell was 75% blood saturation, which under normal circumstances would be a life-threatening level of oxygen in the blood, but because it was intermittent, certain things happen. And what we need to do is to compare this with high altitude training. If you go to Mexico City, I think it was the 68 Olympics, very high altitude, obviously the oxygen in the air is very low. So it's really difficult if you're not acclimatized to actually compete. So let's think of the biochemistry. What happened to your oxygen? You weren't breathing, so it went down. O2, down. What happened to your CO2? Yeah, you weren't breathing out either, so your CO2 went up. So you can see this is the opposite to our power breathing, the exact opposite. This is, as far as the body is concerned, a life-threatening occasion. But of course the body has adaptations for just such an eventuality. The first thing that will happen, once your oxygen saturation gets down to 80, 75%, technically hypoxemia is below 91%, right? So we are taking it a lot further than that, down to 75. But we can do that because it's intermittent. So O2 down, CO2 up. So the body then adapts. Your spleen is a blood bank, and it holds around 10% extra blood for just such an emergency. So the spleen will contract and add an extra 10% or so of blood to your bloodstream. Obviously, that blood includes red blood cells, which are highly oxygenated. So your body is giving you a dose of extra oxygen in your blood. The important thing about the blood in the spleen is that the hematocrit, which is the percentage of red blood cells, is 80% in your spleen. In your body now, your hematocrit will be 40%, 50% maybe. So it is supercharged with oxygen and red blood cells. Okay? That has already hit your bloodstream now because we were hypoxemic. So the first thing is called splenic contraction. And this will happen, well, and just to give you an idea, 75–80% oxygen in your blood is probably equivalent to 6,000 to 8,000 feet above sea level. So that is probably Kilimanjaro or something like that. As a guide, and the reason why I stopped Russell and made him breathe in is because at 50% it is equivalent to 19,000 feet above sea level. Use a pulse oximeter to make sure, and roughly Russell will be the same as most of you, unless you have a medical condition, of course, or as you know. So the first thing, splenic contraction will happen due to low oxygen, and you will get that extra dose of red blood cells with an 80% hematocrit. So that's one. The second adaptation is that your kidney will release something called EPO, erythropoietin maturate red blood cells in the bone marrow, and once again that will go into your bloodstream. So you have right now a massive injection of red blood cells, each carrying 4 molecules of oxygen in each one, and so you have a massive boost right now to your oxygen carrying capacity by becoming hypoxemic. And if you think you can't really do this to the same extent through exercise, because even when you were boxing, high intensity, obviously you can't have a pulse oximeter on, but in high intensity exercise I can't get below 95%. And so basically the oxygen in your blood is pretty normal even when you're in the gym. But when you're breath holding, that's a different story. And we only did 70 seconds breath hold. And Russell went down to 75, no doubt some of you would have done the same. Okay, but certainly everybody was hypoxemic below 91%. But you see how quick it comes back up again within 3 breaths, 5 breaths. So these two things have happened. EPO instructs or signals the bone marrow to produce more red blood cells. The spleen then also contracts and puts its share of red blood cells into your system, so you are now totally saturated with oxygen because of the breath hold, not through any exercise, through not breathing. Okay, and you could have added a good 10 to 15% oxygen to your brain by not breathing. So the motto, the take home for today is don't breathe and you get more oxygen. Over breathe, like you did to start, you will reduce oxygen to the brain by as much as 50%. That is massive.
Can I ask a silly question?
Won't be silly, I'm sure.
If the breath holds massively increase the O2 in the bloodstream,
Can't increase it.
I thought you said that it was all the red blood cells and everything.
Oh, right, yeah. So I thought you meant during the breath.
No, so when you finish your breath hold,
yes, so you've got more oxygen.
so why do you only do the med ball then?
Because it means then that your CO2 is high. That is not conducive to muscle fatigue. Your low CO2 was conducive to delaying lactic acid.
Right, yeah.
So what you would do as a preparation for a sports performance is to do the breath holding first, splenic contraction, kidney EPO, and then just before you go out, after your warm-up, power breathe. So you've got extra oxygen in your
More
body,
CO2.
but then you get your CO2 down. Right, but yeah, that was a good question, wasn't it? That wasn't silly. Right, so two things.
So would having an increase in red blood cells help with muscle recovery?
Absolutely, because you've got more oxygen. Oxygen is healing. So yeah, certainly improve recovery, without a doubt. This will affect recovery negatively because your CO2 is low. CO2 is even not so scary gas because you know from your breath hold eventually as the CO2 rises it gives you the urge to breathe. So if you have CO2 high, as in a breath hold, or as we'll come to slow breathing, then your blood basically becomes acidic. You've become alchemists, you've changed the chemistry of your blood, you can see from Russell. Yeah? So 75% then is oxygen, but his CO2 was then going up because he wasn't breathing. So that means his blood became acidic. This is alkaline. This is to delay the onset of fatigue, the top one, the power breath. This is healing. And this is what I did to help my injury, create an acidic environment which is more conducive. It improves blood flow and all the nutrients to the injury that your body needs. And in fact, they've done research by applying, I don't know how they did it, but they applied CO2 to wounds. And the wounds healed in half the time. So CO2 is a very, very powerful gas, but it's scary, but it's also a calming gas. Okay. Now there's one more thing happens here, and this will come back to your point, Steve. If you've not heard of Christian Bohr, you may have done. You've done science at school or chemistry. B-O-H-R, not as in Bohr the animal. And in 1904, he discovered the effect of CO2 on oxygen delivery. So he basically produced a graph, if I can do this, and it was an S-shaped graph, right? So if I just put some numbers on, 100, 100, 50, 50, 25. Okay, so there is your Bohr curve. Now, this side is SpO2, which is the saturation of oxygen in your blood, which we measured with Russell. This is PaO2, which is the partial pressure of oxygen, meaning how easy or difficult it is for oxygen to leave the blood into your brain, into your tissues, into your muscles. So for example, if your SpO2 is 100%, your oxygen is locked in your blood. It will not get to your brain, it will not get to your tissues or your muscles. That's why we lowered your oxygen. As you lower the oxygen, the CO2 goes up. So what Christian Bohr discovered that when CO2 rises, there is a right shift in the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. So the dotted line is your high CO2. So if, say, we know Russell went down to 75%, so if I draw a line, 75 to the normal neutral position, I get, say, this is not to scale, you get 50% partial pressure of oxygen, and that would be normal. When your CO2 is high, you can see from the dotted line, that line goes across and then down. You now have 75% partial pressure of oxygen. It's increased. As the partial pressure of oxygen in the blood increases, it loses its binding to hemoglobin and it goes to your brain, your tissues, your muscles. So the Bohr effect is Here, high CO2, the more oxygen you have. How do you get high CO2? You don't breathe. Or you breathe slow. Okay? So come back to our person who overbreathes 15, 20 breaths per minute through asthma, anxiety, stress, whatever. Their oxygen is locked in their body. It is not available to their brain, and we measured oxygen, but we can't measure CO2. But if a normal CO2 is, say, 35 millimeters of mercury when we start, when you do the power breathing, so we're back to the first one, the power breathing, losing CO2 rock bottom, it could easily go down to 15 millimeters of mercury. So you've reduced your CO2 by 20 millimeters of mercury. Okay? And that is how we delayed the urge to breathe. But if, and it was intermittent, that's the important thing, if it was chronic, somebody say in a nursing home who has poor posture and is breathing like this, they're going to be breathing 20 plus breaths per minute, losing CO2, the same as when you've intermittently power breathed. So for every 1 millimeter reduction in CO2, 3% reduction in oxygen to your brain. That is scary. 3%. In this example, it went down by 20 millimeters of mercury. So therefore, 60% reduction in oxygen to your brain by chronically over-breathing, breathing too much air. When we don't breathe, the Bohr effect, you have more oxygen to your brain because the partial pressure of oxygen increases and oxygen then loses its affinity to hemoglobin and is cast out because of the high CO2 into your brain, your tissues, your muscles. Okay. Any questions on that? So 3 things: splenic contraction, 10%, kidney EPO, bone marrow, maturates more red blood cells, and the important thing is the hematocrit of the spleen, 80% of it is red blood cells. So much super rich oxygen is now in your body. Okay? And then thirdly, the Bohr effect. How high CO2 releases oxygen. Low CO2 holds on to oxygen. Any questions there?
Presumably the spleen can only support the oxygen levels for a short period of time.
There is no point having a blood bank if it has no blood. So within 15 minutes the spleen will reabsorb so you borrowed it, right? I didn't give you it. You borrowed it and it will then be clawed back.
And when it comes back,
as will the EPO within 3 to 4 hours.
and then it would
So you need to train pretty quick.
Does the spleen then develop the extra red blood cells itself?
Yes,
to
then
create
it'll
that
just
power.
rejuvenate and it'll go back to 80% hematocrit, ready for the next life-threatening emergency.
How long does that take, did you say?
15 minutes.
15 minutes.
It'll reabsorb that extra red blood cells. It'll take it back again. As I say, there's no point having a bank if there's nothing in it. Because what happens later that day when there is a life-threatening event, your body is made to survive. It has so many ways of making you survive, even in harsh circumstances.
At what point does the spleen say, right, you're getting it now? Is it
when oxygen goes down. It'd be different for each person.
Oh, right,
you can't give a specific, but you must be hypoxemic. Hypoxemia is clinically regarded as below 91%. Normal is 95 to 99, but as I say, even between 91 and 94, paramedic would be thinking you need to be in A&E pretty quick and they'll have a mask on you before you know it.
So the chances are then, when we're doing breath holds, the spleen's going to release that oxygen after the first one, because you're already getting below.
The spleen does it in stages.
Oh, right.
The 5th breath hold is the maximum splenic contraction.
Doesn't dump it all in one go.
No. It does a bit more, because it's thinking, I need to hold on to something
right.
here.
Yeah.
But if it happens 5 times in a row, the whole lot will go. Yeah. So that's why you need to do breath holds in 5s. If you want the maximum splenic contraction. Okay. For me, my personal practice is to do the breath holds every morning, because my work is pretty high intensity throughout the day. So morning time is the best for me to do this. I don't eat on the morning, so it's perfect. You can't eat and do breath holds and hold it on. It's just impossible. So yeah, first thing in the morning, 5 breath holds. I use the pulse oximeter so I know exactly where I am. And I used to do more. I used to do more with heavier breathing until I realised I was going down 60% or even lower. And then I thought, this is not, where does it end? You know, if 50% is 19,000 feet above sea level, I don't want to be there. Even though it's intermittent and you're only there for a very short time, you have to think long term, is it a healthy thing to do? So you could use a pulse oximeter, and if you become hypoxemic below 91%, then the spleen will start to release some. Maybe not as much as if you were at 75% like Russell. Okay.
So,
yeah.
sorry. So I was going to ask, how long, with the breath holds we've done now, how long will that high red blood cell?
Yeah. So it's 15 minutes for the spleen. Claw it back, 3 to 4 hours for the kidney EPO.
This is exactly why I asked the question, because of the cycles, because for blood oxygen is red blood cell count is one of the big things.
Super important. Yeah. Well, think of free divers even more.
Divers, yeah.
If you want to know how to breathe, ask a free diver. Yeah. So I was saying safety, right? So I use a pulse oximeter, so I know now I'm happy to go same as Russell, 75%, even 70, but I don't now go into 60s because I do it every day. And in the interest of research for you, I also did some psychedelic breathing, which is batshit crazy, because you breathe, power breathe for an hour. You were power breathing for 30 seconds, you power breathe for an hour. There's shamanic drums going, there's red Indians, all of this sort of thing, and you're away with the fairies, because with psychedelic, you're releasing opioids and cannabinoids from your brainstem, which is obviously why it's like a 60s hippie thing, isn't it? And that's why they do it, right? And they just breathe like crazy, and they're getting so much opioids into their blood that they're on a different planet. They're hallucinating. Something called DMT is released, I think it's dimethyltryptamine. And it's a class 1 drug. It's in your brainstem. You've got your own supply. You don't need to buy it.
Can we sell it?
It's already there.
Good, Josh.
But on the flip side, so is dopamine, so is serotonin, which we're going to come to next. Okay? So, right, let's move on. So, any last questions on the breath hold, splenic contraction, EPO, the Bohr effect? You all now know the things that A-level students know. Caleb came to me a month or so ago. Hey Dad, Bohr effect. Do you know when your CO2 rises, you get more oxygen? Yes, son, I know that. So it's good. It's being taught in schools.